right, we are live. We got 80 people in here already. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me just get this all set up. Mic check. All right, awesome. Let me fix that. It looks a little better. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Of course, we're going to be covering day 2 of the Richard Allen trial. Of course, it's just jury selection. Opening statements start on Friday, but it looks like they have the jury, 17 people. We're going to cover that. We're going to go over, obviously, today, but we're also going to go over what's actually going on in the courtroom. How are the attorneys doing? You know, what is it like in the courtroom itself, because obviously there's no cameras, obviously murder sheet, you know, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee, they're always there, and so it seems like, I'm assuming they're going to be putting out a podcast each day. Obviously the day that they put it out is from the day prior, unless they put it out later that night. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that works. But anyway, obviously, so they're in the courtroom, and, you know, since it's two of them, they're both taking notes. And so I do have some highlights from their podcast that came out recently, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what it's like in there. And then some new bombshells that were dropped today that be interesting to talk about. So yeah, a lot to go over. I always see this. Where is it? Sandra says, excellent new music. I miss the old theme. I know. That song I had before, it's now copyrighted. Oh, I hate it so bad. So I know it was a good like intro song, and now it gets copyrighted. So unfortunately, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna try to do like a Halloween theme for an intro, kind of make it short, but. Yeah, I do miss that. Sensei, good to see you. Always a pleasure, Chris. We love you and all you do. Thank you so much, Sensei. God bless you guys. Real quick, before we get started, we always like to feature the missing real quick. So let
Teenage girls.
All right, so today's missing, we have Andy Madison Wagner. She went missing, it looks like 2 years ago. It's a little over 2 years. This is August 6th, from Evansville, Indiana. She went 24 when she went missing, 115 pounds, 5'5", brown hair, brown eyes. Looks like she's got a lot of tattoos here. I'm assuming that's on both arms there. That's kind of cool. So the notes say, no one has heard from Andy, and her family is concerned for her safety. Andy's phone last pinged in Newburgh, Indiana, but she could also be in Oakland City. Andy suffers from substance issues and depression. Andy deserves to be found, and her family deserves answers. So if anybody knows or any heavy tips, you can call 812-436-7896. Once again, that's Andy Wagner, missing out of Evansville, Indiana. Went missing 2 years ago, and looks like there's also a $25,000 reward. All right. Hey, Ronnie, good to see you. It's been a while. Let's see, a lot of people in here. If you can, please hit that like button, and we're going to jump right into it here.
Teenage girls, Abby Williams and Liberty German, had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge.
I'm going to play just a quick recap. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play the first 2 minutes, just for anybody that might not be familiar with this case. So I'll just play this little intro. That way I can make sure chat's going well. And then we're going to jump into a little bit of day 1 from inside the courtroom and just how it's going. And then we're going to jump into day 2 and all the crazy stuff that was talked about today.
Teenage girls, Abby Williams and Liberty German, had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge, which was supposed to be a teenage hangout with a historic trail and a really high old abandoned bridge. The two girls, who were best friends, just had a sleepover the night before and were excited when Libby's sister, Kelsey German, said she would drop them off as long as the two girls found a ride home, which they did. Although it was February, the temperature was nice for that day, and even though it was a Monday, they had school off that day. The two girls, Abby and Libby, would be dropped off just before 2 p.m., where they planned on only staying for a couple of hours. The two teens, Abby and Libby, would begin walking the 501 trail to the Monon High Bridge. As the two would approach the bridge, Libby, who had her iPhone, would take two pictures, one as they passed the first platform, and another which shows Abby looking down as she is crossing the scary, tall, gap-filled railroad tie. The girls didn't know it yet, but they were not alone. As a few hours would go by, the father of Libby, Derek German, would show up, but the two girls were not at the meetup spot. Thinking that the two teens just lost track of time, he would end up calling Libby's phone. The phone was ringing, but no one was answering. He would begin searching for the two teens, but when running into other people, no one had seen them. Eventually, the authorities would be called out, and this would lead to a search party looking for the two girls. But sadly, there was no sign of them on that first night of the 13th. With the search being called off late that night for safety reasons, it would be resumed early that next day. They brought in helicopters, divers, and many other resources to scour the area. But just around noon that day, they would soon discover a grisly scene. Authorities would discover the two girls across the river, and both had sadly been murdered.
Investigators solemnly identified the two bodies found in Carroll County as 13-year-olds Libby German and Abby Williams.
We would soon get multiple press conferences.
Okay, so, excuse me. All right, so yeah, there's the 2-minute recap for just anybody that may not be familiar with the case. Sadly, they would find the girls the next day, and then the case would go unsolved for another 5 years. There was quite a few persons of interest over those 5 year time frame. We had Ron Logan, we had Kagan Klein, and then eventually there was kind of a search in the Wabash River that seemed to be kind of connected with Kagan Klein, and then shortly after that, in October, almost 2 years ago, they would arrest a man, Richard Allen, who was a local. He worked at the CVS. He was not a pharmacist. He just worked at CVS as a shift supervisor. And he even said that he was there that day. And we'll kind of go over all that. But let's get into, let's see. I should have wrote down where we were at here. This is day one. Kind of trying to put everything in order. So kind of at the end of day one, I think they had 6 men and 8 women. So obviously there was 14, but they needed 17 because obviously there's 12 jurors and then, alternates. And then it appears today that they finished that. So let's this is a little bit from the murder sheet, because obviously they're in the courtroom taking notes. And so here's just kind of the vibe of what's going on, and there's some interesting things that they heard that they share in this that we'll have to talk about.
I guess
round only had 4.
Yeah, it was a tiny round in the end, but 5 rounds in total. And there was, you mentioned the lack of lunch break.
Yeah, they're going to talk about it.
To keep it, the public and the media and the families and the attorneys, this was a long day for everybody, but it was also a very long day for those two groups of 52 everyday Allen County citizens. There was one, I think, 10-minute break at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
So they're talking about how what it was like to be in there, like with the breaks. It seems like it was just a grind with little breaks in between. They were it seemed like some of the people, some of the potential jurors, kind of realized that this was going to be definitely a big thing, and they wanted out.
Right. But other than that, it was full steam
Something like
ahead.
that.
So we were in there for a while.
And I should mention when I say rounds, what I mean by that. There would be 12 people in the jury box, and someone from the prosecution side, which was always, in this case, Nicholas McClelland, would have half an hour to talk with them, ask them questions, try to elicit information from them. And then a representative from the defense side, which rotated among them, they would have a half an hour to do the same. So that's an hour. And then after that, they would confer amongst their fellow attorneys and then with each other and with Judge Gull, and then would be decided, okay, we're going to accept these jurors, we're going to excuse these other jurors. So that's what a round is.
And
So, and yeah, this we'll talk about. I think some people are already kind of revealing the
Is
motive.
about.
I don't think it'd be a surprise on what the motive is. But here's the thing is, how do we know what the motive was? There's only one person that I think the killer would be able to know. I mean, obviously we could speculate, but anyway, I think that's going to be part of one of the confessions.
things. Richard Allen, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 2 girls.
So this is kind of like they just said, they'd have like a potential jury pool of 12, and then each team, had a certain amount of time to kind of share their thoughts, and then, engage with the jury, potential jurors. And so this is kind of what the mini opening statements from the prosecution. And I think this is where they talk about the motive, or it comes later.
Did he say it was about Richard Allen, or did he say it was about Bridge Guy?
I thought it said Richard Allen, but I wrote down Richard Allen. If you wrote down Bridge Guy, then I defer to you.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the
He
hair
talked
too.
about how the girls had the day off school.
Mm-hmm.
And went walking down the trails. He said the people in Delphi tend to enjoy these trails, to go and enjoy nature. He talked about there was this Monon Bridge 60 feet above Deer Creek that the kids like crossing.
Yeah, to prove their bravery, and that girl, that day the girls, crossed the bridge.
And he said they weren't alone.
Yeah, they were not alone.
They were followed by Bridge Guy, who had a gun and forced them down the hill. Intent to how did he phrase it?
He said, I have the quote as, quote, he used this gun to force them down the hill, and his intent was to have his way with them.
Which I tend to think is
Indicative of
a delicate way of talking about a sexual assault.
Yes.
essay. So obviously that's what the prosecution is saying, and I'm assuming that's coming because we've already kind of heard some minute details about the confessions, from the July hearing, and I even think even before that. So I don't think that's too much of a surprise. But yeah, that's what the prosecution is saying, and I think that's allegedly going to be coming from Richard Allen's mouth. Now, whether side you're on, but yeah, that's apparently what he claims.
He talks about how there was an interruption, and that then the bridge guy used the gun to force the girls to cross Deer Creek, and remove their clothes. And then abruptly he said, quote, and then he cut their throats, end quote.
So this is very interesting. So apparently he was interrupted. And this is very interesting because we've never heard, I don't think I've heard anything about the killer being interrupted. I know there's been so many rumors. But this comes from Barbara McDonald, and they do say it in this as well, that the killer apparently got interrupted, and it was at 3:30, which is very interesting, and it was from a resident coming home, which I think is the Webbers. I think it might be Brad Weber. Again, I'm pretty familiar with this case, but I know there's a lot of people that probably know this case better than I do. But I find that very interesting, just because of the 3:30 time frame, and I'll show why here in just a second. So, obviously, this is an overview of Deer Creek. This is where the crime scene was, where Bridge Guy is standing there. And then we have that private driveway, which I believe this is the Weber's home. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know one of them's Weber's home. So there's a driveway, and that driveway kind of goes under the bridge, even though it looks like the bridge just goes and stops here, but it actually goes a little bit further. So, and I'm going to show you guys how close it is from like the crime scene looking over. Very interesting. Randolph says, I'm on no side. We need to hear the evidence. I respect that. For those that are new to the channel, personally, I feel like Richard Allen is the best fit out of all the people that came before him. Just everything lines up, He said 1:30 to 3:30 originally, and I know that allegedly he changes that conveniently from noon to 1:30. But still, the fact that he was there, he admits to being there. I think that puts him way high on the list. But that 1:30 to 3:30 time frame, it lines up perfect. For those that have seen my timeline, the puzzle pieces for everybody else, because there's so many moving parts that are going on. You have the 4 juvenile witnesses walking away from the bridge, going to the Freedom Bridge, and then if you have Allen at 1:30, like you said originally, everything lines up where he would park and meet up with the girls. And yeah, so here is a look. This would be the crime scene, kind of right around here. If you guys can see, let me clear that real quick. And there's the private driveway. So, I mean, because obviously it would have looked like this, because it would have been February. So this is a great reenaction, creation of what it would look like that day. And so somebody driving by, I mean, you could probably clearly see them. You could probably hear the car coming and everything. So it'll be interesting. How did they know he got interrupted? This is what I'm wondering. Is this in one of his confessions that he says, I got interrupted? It'll be very interesting to find out. Thank you for everybody coming in. We almost got 500 people. If you can't, hit that like button. We're just kind of recapping a little bit of day one, just what's inside going on in the courtroom itself. But yeah, here's what it'd look like. You'd have a car kind of going up the driveway. I'm assuming Brad Weber. I'm assuming it's Brad Weber. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if that was going on, you would hear that car and see it. And then the killer would have panicked and then rushed out of there not long after. Hey, Boogie, good to see you. Let's see. Hey, Jennifer, welcome. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, this is what I just wanted to say. Again, I find this very interesting. His original timeline says 1:30 to 3:30. I just thought it was interesting because we know the killer was actually there until a little bit later, because he would be spotted. The killer would be spotted at 3:57, walking to their car. So it's more like the killer was there from 1:30 to 4, or a little after, I guess. So very interesting that he says that 3:30.
But he said bridge guy left behind a bullet, which was found between the bodies. He talked about how you will hear Richard Allen place himself at the scene, and you will see that Richard Allen is bridge guy. He says you will see Richard Allen himself, in his own words, say that he did it and how and why.
He talks about there's going to be evidence and video, and they're going to show that Richard Allen is bridge guy, and that they're going to talk about all these confessions. He lists the ones to his wife, his mother, correctional officers, his therapist, and quote anybody else that would listen, end quote.
And he concluded by saying Richard Allen is bridge guy, and it was Richard Allen who left the bullet, which is traced to one of Richard Allen's guns.
So remember, this is obviously Nicholas talking to the jury. This is a little, just kind of a mini opening statement. So just little minute details, but some that are kind of interesting that we haven't heard before. Now, this is what the defense is claiming, and then we'll kind of talk about, because again, if you don't like the murder sheet, that's fine. I think they do a good job reporting, because they talk about the defense, and they're going to talk about the defense, how they said that Baldwin was doing a really good job. They felt like Rosie was not connecting with the jurors as much, but Baldwin was doing great. And then I guess they have another lady that's working with them. I've still got a deep dive on her yet. I didn't get a chance to, because I just barely learned of her.
About the conditions Richard Allen was in when he was
been languishing, deteriorating mentally and physically in solitary confinement, end quote.
He talked about the difference between what he calls soft evidence and hard evidence.
Yes. He called out Melissa Oberg, who is going to be one of the state's witnesses, I believe, for the firearms, for the bullet evidence. She's going to be very important to the state for that. And he's saying, basically, well, that's more open to interpretation.
So that's soft evidence.
And she's going to say that she never made a big mistake, but, maybe people in her office did in other cases. And
he said that the phone, the girl's phone, would be an example of hard evidence because it has definite data on it. And he claims that this data will show where the girls were and what they were doing, and that's hard data.
Mm-hmm. And he also alluded to what he described as, quote, infighting between FBI and local police, end quote. I thought it was amusing that I'm assuming that's referring to state police as well as Carroll County Sheriff's Office. But the term local seemed a bit derogatory there.
So that's kind of interesting. So I think that's come from the defense, saying it seems like some of the law enforcement agencies weren't getting along. Be interested to find out how that, if that's true, or if there's something in the middle, in between.
Saying that basically the FBI left and they had a falling out because they, whatever.
So after that, it was time for the questioning of the jurors to begin.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how Baldwin did?
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I thought attention grabbing. I thought he boiled down some interesting information. I don't know how much weight to put into some of his statements because, to be frank, this defense team often says things and then they're kind of debunked later on. And so when he's sweating bullets and being out of your mind with nerves, because that's not always what happens. And he spoke a little bit too absolutely. He also came over, McClellan was...
So they kind of went back and forth, but and I didn't want to take their whole show, so I just only took a few clips from each, just from certain parts. But basically, they said Baldwin was really good. He was connecting with the jurors, and then Rosie, I guess he was being kind of really stern, and I guess he was having trouble hearing some of the jurors when they're interacting, and so she felt like he wasn't doing as great a job as Baldwin. But it seems for the defense's side, Baldwin was doing amazing. And then their other one, I forget her name. It's mentioned in here. it sounded like she was doing a great job as well.
Very personable, very much like, I'm nervous. How are you guys feeling? Are you nervous? Kind of like a stand-up comedian. Like,
And this is them, and then this is them talking about how McClellan was doing, interacting with the jurors.
Connecting with the audience. Brad Rosley immediately is complaining about he can't hear anybody. Sorry if it sounds like I'm yelling. It was just a little more
His tone generally
abrupt.
was strangely aggressive.
He was very aggressive with these jurors. And I'm going to say this in his defense before we go any further. It's possible that maybe there's some research that they're privy to or some of his past experiences where maybe there's kind of almost like a counterintuitive, if you're aggressive with the jury, they want to impress you and they want to like make you proud and like, oh no, he doesn't like me. I'm going to try harder to like make him like me. Like kind of a, I don't know. I mean, I open their hearts.
He did basically the same thing here. He goes, he stands behind Rick Allen.
And then we heard this in the news yesterday. I'm just going to play a short clip of this, and then we're going to get into day 2, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys what it was like inside the courtroom, kind of the atmosphere. And then this is the when Baldwin went up to Richard Allen to kind of present to the jury that, to say that, this guy could be innocent.
When he puts his hands on Rick Allen's shoulders and says, look at this guy, Rick Allen. And when he says this, Rick Allen kind of has like an awkward little smile on his face, like he's uncomfortable.
I don't blame him, but I think it's a grabbing opening and I liked it.
He said, is it really possible that he is innocent? Look in your hearts and your minds. You've heard talk of confessions, and then
it's in. I don't mean newcomer, like she came on very recently, but she's the newest member. So for a long time it was Baldwin and Rosie. They brought on O'Shea.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody knows in the chat like her full name. Like I said, I just didn't get a chance to look her up, but we see her. I don't know, not in this clip. We'll see her later in a short clip, but yeah, never heard of her before. And then I think I think there might even be a person on the prosecution because I thought it was going to be him and Luttrell, but yeah, is it Jim Luttrell or James Luttrell, something like that. But I haven't heard of him.
And, she hasn't really gotten a lot to do in the courtroom, at least, where we've been able to, like, showcase her skills. Like, there was some confused questioning of Christopher Cecil that other reporters still cite as being very confusing. Whatever. But I thought she did a very good job. She, what I wrote down was clear and calm, right?
Okay. Excuse me. So that was just a little bit of a clip, and if I get a chance, I think I forgot to, but I'll put, if you want to hear the full show, at the end of the live show, I'll put the link in the description and in the chat if you want to listen to it. And I'm assuming either they'll put another one out tonight or tomorrow for today's recap and how it was inside. Because, a lot of times right now we're just getting, obviously, just little tidbits whenever there's a break from the news. But it's interesting to get what's actually going on because obviously there's not going to be any cameras.
Happening now, it's day 2 of jury selection in the Delphi double murders trial. I'm Anna Darling, filling in for Melissa Crash today at noon. Our team got into the courtroom at 9 this morning. We saw a lot of progress on day 1, seating a jury, but we've already seen 3 of these jurors removed from the box this morning and some replacements already selected. That plus new bombshell evidence revealed by the defense team. CBS 4's Russ McQuaid joins us from outside the courthouse in Allen County now. Russ, what's the latest you can tell us?
And a good afternoon. We now have 12 jurors and 3 alternates. We still need 1 more in order to sit this full jury to hear the double murder trial of Richard Allen later this month in Delphi. Richard Allen's defense team arrived this morning at the Allen County Courthouse. Their mission, they were prepared to find a jury willing.
Oh, there's the murder sheet. I was trying to see if I could recognize some of the locals. I don't know who that guy is. If you guys recognize anybody else, let me know in the chat.
To believe that there is reasonable doubt that their client killed Abby Williams and Libby German near the Monon High Bridge during a day off from school in February of 2017. The state's contention is well known
Yeah.
that Allen is Bridge Guy, the suspected killer whose image was captured on Libby's cell phone, and that investigators found a bullet from Allen's gun at the murder scene. Plus, that Allen has confessed to the murders more than 60 times. But during the defense presentation to the jury pool this morning, we learned new details. Not only did Allen claim that he murdered other details that don't exist, he also confessed to killing his family and grandchildren, which clearly never happened. Also, we found that investigators have discovered hair, presumably from the killer, clutched in Abby's hand at the murder scene, but that hair did not come from Richard Allen.
That is so crazy to hear that. That is something we have not heard before. Hair fibers have been mentioned, obviously, all the way back in the Ron Logan search warrant. They mentioned that. DNA has always been kind of back and forth. But then we saw like a leaked document that said that there was DNA documentation. But there was always kind of theory that, yeah, it didn't probably link to the killer. So this is very interesting. And the word that they use is clutched. I find that very fascinating. Not like it's just, laying there accidentally, like some hair blew, near her body, but it's clutched. That is very interesting. Usually when you see that in a murder case, it's because there was some, they're trying to fight back, and maybe they pull some hair from the suspect killer. So this is very interesting. Yeah, whose hair it is.
Who was one of the two victims in this case had hair found in her hand. This is very interesting because this was actually noted by a reporter way back in the very beginning, but they had taken that detail off. And the big shocker is, it is not a match to Richard Allen.
60 times. But during the defense presentation to the jury pool this morning, we learned new details. Not only did Allen claim that he murdered other details that don't exist, he also confessed to killing his family and grandchildren, which clearly never happened. Also, we found that investigators have discovered hair, presumably from the killer, clutched in Abby's hand at the murder scene, but that hair did not come from Richard Allen. His attorneys are trying to lay the groundwork of a false confession defense based on mental health and Allen's time awaiting trial in solitary confinement in a maximum security state prison.
There has been much debate on whether they had DNA in this case, and if so, what form was it in? And finally, that has been revealed. This actually lines up with the search warrant made for Ron Logan, which mentions hair fibers found at the crime scene.
It looked to investigators like the girls died without putting up a fight. Unknown fibers and hairs were collected from the scene.
Unknown hairs and fibers. Now, fibers, I'm sure you'd find just about in any case, some kind of fibers, maybe some kind of, clothing that, something from the clothing that transferred to something else, something like that.
The search warrant authorized investigators to seize any guns or knives Logan had in his house, take a sample of his blood or bodily fluids, and his cell phone.
This is my backyard. My backyard just happens to be bigger than most people. How many people have a murder committed?
This will definitely be a benefit for the defense. It's something they can work with in the trial. But we know that the killer likely had a hat and or a cap on his head. And the alleged killer, Richard Allen, is usually seen with short hair.
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. Obviously, I think if you had to go to, this video is poor quality, but it will be interesting. They said that there's been an enhancement. Obviously this was taken from 2017, so I'm assuming they've maybe been able to enhance the original footage. Hopefully, it'll be interesting to see how much more it's been enhanced, and if they can enhance it, just the video itself. Remember the audio from guys down the hill, even that audio is not the best because it's taken from the video, and I think the theory is that this video got either sent to the cloud or Snapchat. And if it went to the cloud, a lot of times, or at least back then, it would compress itself, right? So this iPhone that Libby had, it was an iPhone 5S, I believe. I actually went on eBay and got the same phone and recorded. That particular phone can only shoot up to 720p. It's still, 720p is still good. But just doing a little bit of research, it appears that back then, you could send stuff to the cloud, and to kind of save space, what it would do is it would compress itself. So, and then if you wanted to retrieve it, it would need to uncompress. But sometimes people, there was issues back in the day where they would go and retrieve their video from the cloud, and it would still be compressed. And this video kind of looks like it's in a compressed state. So maybe they were able to uncompress it. Again, this is just kind of theory. We'll find out. But of course, Alan had short hair, so I would imagine if it is Alan, he would, leave hair. And I don't think he had that beard.
So one could argue that it wouldn't be a stretch to think that Alan wouldn't have likely left any hair behind. But the question still remains, whose hair is it? It would be crazy to think if the killer did bring some random hair with them to place near the victims to throw the investigation off. Also, keep in mind that it has been said in that same search warrant for Ron Logan that there was no sign of a struggle by the two victims. So why would there be a hair in the victim's hand if they did not put up a fight? To me, it's certainly plausible that this was planted there on purpose, but that is just my opinion and theory.
So yeah, I know you guys are already sharing your thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, do we even know if it's human hair or animal hair? Because we know that they took hair samples from like Keegan Kline. Apparently, they took hair samples from the dog. Alan here, yeah, there's rumors saying that didn't they dig up his cat? Again, I don't know, if that's true or not. Oh, thank you so much, Peyton, for the PayPal. God bless you. You are amazing supporter. Thank you so much, Peyton. Yeah, so let me know, what do you think, animal or human? Because they did. Other persons of interest, allegedly, we heard, I think even from Ron Logan, that they took animal hair. So it'll be interesting to find out. I'm sure you can tell, they know if it's animal or human. But, and then I thought this was kind of interesting. If you realize, Richard Allen's sitting in front of, obviously, the wanted poster, and obviously he's got this big long beard and then no hair, which is almost kind of complete opposite of what, the sketch is. But yeah, if you can't, try to refrain from using all caps. We have a cap limit. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too, Indy. Yeah, we'll get there as well. That's kind of interesting. Weren't the bodies clean when found? How did hair get in her hand? Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, obviously the defense, they're there. They have an agenda to defend Richard Allen. They're not there to solve the case. So, do we have all the context to, the hair? But if it was human hair, would that exclude the... Again, sounds like it'd be good for the defense, but could it also backfire? Because let's say if it is human hair, then all these PIs or POIs that they're going to bring in, like Keegan Kline and a person that was a cellmate for Ron Logan, you could use the argument saying, well, I'm sure they did a DNA test for them and it didn't come back. So I think it's a double-edged sword for both sides. Brandy says it was said to be a red hair, but I don't know if that's fact. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to know. Because again, when you think clutched, you think like the victim was fighting back and they nabbed a piece of hair of the suspect. But yeah, that's really wild. Yeah, I think it's definitely could be from animal. Again, just like I said earlier, they took pet hair from Ron Logan. Of course, he passed on because of COVID. Kagan Klein, I know that they took hair from him, and then I believe from their dog as well. And then we have a picture of Richard Allen with the cat sleeping on his back. And yeah, there was rumors that they dug up allegedly an animal. So it'll be kind of interesting to find out what kind of hair that is. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get a lot. I mean, obviously, we're getting little tidbits. This is clearly very interesting. Yeah, Rebecca says, I'm interested to see what evidence they actually have. So, the prosecution, they want to obviously not have the two sketches in the trial. I don't blame them because obviously the defense would definitely use them because they don't look anything. So this is just the highlight. But it says the composite sketches prepared were intended as an investigative tool to generate leads to identify a suspect. And in fact, these sketches were not related to the identification of Richard Allen as a suspect. Therefore, the sketches would not be relevant. And then as a code. Number 2 says that the witness who assisted in preparation of the composite sketches of the bridge guy would testify that they did not see the person depicted in the sketch for a significant length of time to allow them to positively identify the defendant. Therefore, again, code, the sketch are not relevant evidence. That's interesting. So it says plural that the witnesses, so obviously we got Betsy and we have Sarah Carbaugh, the two witnesses that are behind the two sketches. That's interesting. They use the word plural. Again, speaking with former law enforcement, really a sketch is just made to, it's not supposed to be a portrait. It's really supposed to be like, there's a special feature, maybe the jawline or the hair or maybe just the nose. There's usually kind of something, that stands out. But as far as like 1-to-1, I forget the odds. I think it's 1 in 10 when they're actually pretty close to the actual person. So you got to keep in mind, sketches are really, as far as accurate depiction of the actual killer, usually they're, usually there's just one defining feature that they're really trying to go for. But yeah, as you can see here, Alan, obviously this is what he looks like now. There's somebody who kind of, put his part of his face in there, and you could kind of see where it does kind of line up. But I'm sure you could do that with a lot of people, and kind of make it look like it would fit. All right, so day 2 inside the courtroom. There was another reporter who was inside. I forget what station this is. Obviously, another local station. He was inside the courtroom. Obviously, I think they finished a little early because they got all the jurors, which is great. So it looks like they're going to take tomorrow off. Then they're going to be back Thursday to do some motions, and I think they're actually going to talk about some other things that are they're going to do Thursday, and then Friday is going to be opening statements. I can't believe we're finally here. It's crazy. So here's Barbara McDonald. Jury selected a Delphi double murder trial. 11 women and 6 men. 17 in all. So I thought it was 12 and 4. So it seems like maybe they got, maybe an extra just in case something doesn't work out. Because we know that they had, I think, 14 yesterday by the end of the day. And then I think 2 of those, or at least 2 or 3 of those, ended up leaving. So, yeah, that's great.
Full of 12 jurors, and after.
So here's this guy. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've ever seen this guy, but he was in there, and so he'll kind of explain what was going on today.
For about an hour and a half, though, of questioning and of deliberations, of those 12, 4 of them were selected. So we went from 11 to 15. So the full jury has been set. There are 3 alternates, and then they now just need 1 more alternate set. A couple other notes.
So I think this is the halfway mark of today. Keep that in mind.
That I want to pass along, and then I do want to get any of the questions, Tom, that you or Corinne have. I'll do my best to try to answer them. One is that the prosecution announced, or asked the judge rather, if the judge would hear a motion having to do with a witness. The judge said yes, but then the prosecution said that they were not ready to present that. Could they present it on Thursday here in Allen County? Judge Gull agreed to that. So we thought that Thursday was going to be a day off. That was going to be a day of preparations. Thursday now is not a day off. They will be hearing that motion from the prosecution on Thursday at 9 a.m. And then finally, the most, I would say, tense moment or lively moment of the day was when the prosecution accused the defense of conditioning the witnesses.
It's already started.
Corinne could sort of explain sort of what that means, but the prosecution accused the defense of conditioning the witnesses by certain questions they were asking, certain questions about if Richard Allen was guilty or not. Did he look like somebody who could have committed these crimes? And then the defense then alleged the prosecution of leading witnesses. Judge Gull wasn't having any of it, though. Judge Gull then looked at the defense and said, and I quote,
so there's that lady here. Somebody said her name in the chat, and I'm sorry, it got lost. I wanted to highlight it. I want to say it was like a Jennifer or something. Yeah, I got to look her up, but it sounds like she did at least yesterday, according to Mirror Sheet, Baldwin and her did a really great job, I guess, connecting with the jurors. And Rosie was a little bit, I think, if you did good cop, bad cop, it sounds like Baldwin was kind of like the good cop and Rosie was the bad cop. But I'm sure they'll get their stuff going on both sides. Again, I hope it's a fair trial. Again, I'm sure those that follow this channel, I believe Richard Allen's guilty, just according to what we have. But I do hope, both sides get everything in that they want. And I think hopefully we have, 12 jurors that are responsible and do the right thing when the time comes. Leslie and Billy, member for 2 months. Chris, I've been here longer than 2 months. I think if there's maybe, I don't know how that works because that's all automatic on YouTube side. Maybe there was a gap or something. I'm not sure, but I do appreciate the support here.
Asking the jury how they would vote is conditioning, and that ended that discussion.
Yeah.
Hey, Amar, real quick. You're talking about the jurors, not witnesses at this point. Is that right? They were accusing of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom, that's correct.
Process works, and that the defense was accusing the prosecution of kind of influencing the witnesses by some of the questions that they asked. Is that something that you typically see during jury selection of the trials that you've covered there at the Allen County Courthouse?
No, but I think that we've seen from the start of this process to now that this is a trial not like any other. There's a lot of things that we've seen that are not typical of any murder trial that I've personally covered. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing is going to be a first time, probably even for some of the folks at the courthouse.
And we should also point out that there are no cameras in the courtroom, so we're relying on folks like Amr and other reporters giving them kind of a preview of just how
said that they were planning on calling 55 witnesses. I was like,
Woo.
wow, 55 is a lot.
That's from the prosecution side. Wait until you see what the defense. I know we talked about this yesterday.
Wow, for a trial. And then the defense came out and said they were planning on calling 120 witnesses.
Holy
my
shit.
jaw almost hit the floor. I could not believe that 175 witnesses. Tom, it is important to note
175 witnesses. Oh my God. That sounds like it would take like 3 months to get through all that. And I showed, if you were here yesterday, I showed, so if anybody followed the Murdoch trial, they had 61 witnesses. And I think that was about a month, right? I think just like 4 or 5 weeks. I think it might have been 6 weeks, somewhere around in there. Then the Karen Reed trial, which really felt like it dragged on. And I was really surprised. It felt like there was like 80 witnesses or 100. But there was only actually 68 witnesses. What's interesting is if you go back and look at those old trials, you can look up like how many they were anticipating. So usually it's about a third, or I guess it just all kind of depends. But on those two, it seems like they only used 2/3 of the amount of witnesses they originally claimed. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, 175. Good Lord. Leslie says, Chris, do you think Ellen did this? I do. Do you think he did it alone? For a long time, I always felt like there was some kind of secondary, faction involved somehow. It always kind of felt like there might have been, especially with Kagan Klein, and how he allegedly spoke with the girl, Libby, the morning of. And it almost felt like there was some kind of setup because the timing of it is just these poor girls. I mean, they arrive at almost 2 o'clock, 13 minutes after arriving. They're being obviously a gun's pulled on them. 13 minutes. I mean, it's terrible.
That we did get a little clarification just today about if there were any overlap. The judge asked
thank you, Silver Hawkeye.
Any of the witnesses that you are calling, any of your 120, are they in overlap of the prosecution? The defense said yes, but they said not that many. They said maybe between 8 and 10. So that's interesting. So they're going to call some of the prosecution witnesses 8 to 10.
Curious to know which ones those are.
Still brings up 160 or so potential witnesses in this trial. And again, you just heard Corinne talk about how it's a murder trial unlike any other. I mean, one that is so historic for the state of Indiana. Corinne, in your experience and all the trials that you've covered, heard of something like this? Around 150 witnesses being called in one murder trial?
Corinne, he's asking now, is this something that's typical? 100 and
remember, in the Karen Reed trial, man, the prosecution had so many witnesses, and you could tell, like, the jury was getting just bored. And I think that was a huge downfall for the prosecution side with the Karen Reed case. I'm neutral on that one. I'll be honest. Clearly the prosecution, I don't think they proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed did it. But anyway, just referencing, it just felt like they had so many witnesses and it just regurgitating the same stuff, and it just, I think that lost the jury. So if will that backfire with the defense if they do that the same thing where they cut all these witnesses? But keep in mind they're going to bring in witnesses for the third party suspects, but the jury won't be there because they can't, obviously with the jury they can't introduce the third party, but they still can bring it in just to have it on record. That way, if Richard Allen is found guilty, they can then obviously do motions and appeals.
60 potential witnesses, or is this way above the number of normal amount of witnesses in a case?
It was so insane.
The witness list will have people that aren't actually going to be called, but I would say 160 is a lot more than I've ever seen. Those folks are going to be able to speak to technical things. All of them will have a specific role to play. I would be surprised if all 160 of those witnesses are called.
Yeah.
But again, with this being as abnormal as this case has been, there's a good chance that they also could call every single one of those witnesses.
One other interesting thing, and I think you probably see this in all the trials that you've covered, is when they're talking to the witnesses, they're preparing them and telling them, hey, this is not going to be like CSI. This is not going to be like what you watch on TV.
Well, could be up to 6 weeks again. Everything here is unpredictable, Tom. The idea that I'm going to be back most likely in this courtroom on Thursday.
Intelligent is typical, probably more in this case. Yeah.
Also, I do have to bring up another note. This is something that members of the media were discussing a little bit yesterday. They also discussed it again today. We've already seen this trial get delayed a number of times, and because of these additional motions, additional orders, the new hearing that is going to happen on Thursday, there was some discussion among members of the media asking, could once again this trial get delayed?
There's no way.
Right now,
There's no
scheduled
way
to start on Friday in Carroll County.
Amr, I'd imagine that would be heartbreaking
no
for
way.
the family members of Libby and Abby, that they'd have to wait even longer if that happened. Of course, that's just speculation.
There's no way that's happening.
In the courtroom yesterday, Amr, can you describe to us
Abby's grandparents? I can tell you that today, here in Fort Wayne, it is Abby's grandparents again. It is Libby's grandparents, and it is also Libby's aunts. So the amount of family of the young girls has increased from what it was yesterday. Okay, now as far as what you're asking about the suspect, Richard Allen, yes, that was something that was very surprising. I can tell you that today he was also wearing.
So yesterday, I think he was wearing like khakis and a purple shirt. I think it was purple. And then today, he's got a white shirt on, I think. Let's see.
Dress pants. He's wearing a white dress shirt, sort of khaki tan dress pants with a belt. His shirt was tucked in. He also had glasses that I didn't observe yesterday. He had some glasses that he wasn't wearing, but they were on the top of his head.
Sorry, it sounds like he's got like some bad reception there. But he's saying that Richard Allen had some glasses, maybe some reading glasses.
And the other thing I would say about Richard Allen is that many people that have covered this before have been telling me that he's been very animated during jury selection. He's been talking with his attorneys. He hasn't been talking with his attorney Rosie as much, but Baldwin talks a lot, kneels over a lot towards him. His defense attorney, Baldwin, comes over, puts his arm around him. And there have been a couple moments where we have seen Richard Allen either gesture to the potential jurors or something to that effect. I'll give you two examples of it, Tom. One moment was when Baldwin, his attorney.
So we heard this part, but so yeah, it sounds like he's being more animated. Obviously, we've never really seen any of that before. Obviously, there hasn't been much footage of inside the courtroom. There's a little bit more, and then if anybody hasn't seen how it's set up, I'll show the picture of how everything's set up. If you guys don't know,
evidence that you hear during the trial, and then almost in every case, that person then says, "Yes, I can."
Because I would imagine
just to clarify that piece of it. But one other key,
I would imagine that at 7.5 years, right, that there are not many people out there in this area who have not been following the coverage. Is that what you found as they were questioning the jurors?
I would have thought that almost nobody could have not heard about this, but there were a number of potential jurors who said, yeah, I haven't heard about this. It is interesting. Another interesting observation is the first one or two group of potential jurors, most of them don't bring up many reasons as to why they why they wouldn't be able to serve. Then as the day goes on, potential jurors get restless or they get tired or maybe they get more annoyed why they don't want to be selected or why some of the hardships are. I found that is to be an interesting observation. But Tom, before I get back into the courtroom, I want to bring up one other key thing, and again, maybe Corinne can comment on this, and that is something the defense attorney for Richard Allen brought up, Baldwin. He said a couple key things to the potential jurors. He said, Richard Allen confessed to shooting the two young girls in the back, but we have evidence to show that the girls were not shot in the back, or they were not shot in the back. Richard Allen confessed to raping the young girls, but there is medical evidence to show that the young girls were not raped. And then he also said that the hair found in one of the young girls' hands at the crime scene is not Richard Allen's hair. And that piece on the hair, Tom, is something...
So maybe it is. I guess maybe that is human hair for them to say it's not Richard Allen's hair, because that would really backfire if, if we find out it's animal hair, and it's like, why would they do that? Yeah, I got my phone. Oh, I'll check it out here. Okay, yeah, I'll get to it here in just a second. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the hair. So, yeah, if he says that it's not Richard Allen's hair, I guess that's kind of insight that it must be human hair. Again, yeah, because that would sound really stupid, and we find out it is animal hair. But they did. They took animal hair from previous persons of interest, so... Who knows what they've got? I'm sure come Friday, it's going to be some bombshells. I am pretty sure. So for those that may have came in a little bit later, I'll recap all the stuff here. But so I can get to chat. I'm just going to start the timeline here.
Turn around and begin to walk back. They
so
would
I can
run
get to
into
chat
somebody who
here.
they believe could have been the suspect.
My wonderful mod, Jennifer, member for 29 months. That's so awesome.
This is the road the killer likely took just before parking at an abandoned building.
Says, I'm so glad finally trial time. I know. I think a lot of us in here, depending on whatever side you're on, it's been so frustrating because, we've been here a couple times where it's like there's a court date set, and then, a few weeks before or a month before, it gets pushed back. And that's happened, I think, 3 times, I believe. So it's really kind of surreal that this is finally actually happening. And again, I hope everybody on both sides get the answers that they're looking for. And I still wish this was televised, or at the very least, had audio. So, that way, because I know there's a few people out there that feel like there could be some kind of corruption. And, I feel like if it's not televised or whatever, I just hope they have people there. I think there's definitely people that are kind of pro Richard Allen. I think they got people that are going to try to obviously be there in court so they can, accurately report, because they may feel like maybe people that maybe like obviously Murder Sheet, which I feel like they do a great job. They talk. They talk about both sides and how they do, and then give their insight. So I like I said, I'm probably going to refer to them, and then I'm going to try to look for this other gal that might be going, but it's going to be tough because there's not a lot of seats, unfortunately, for the reporters. RA is evil in my opinion. Yeah, if he did this, I mean, just think about these poor girls, just 13 years old, and just wanted to enjoy their day off on a Monday, and 13 minutes in to their trip, a monster arrives, and the timing of everything, it's just so terrible. When you, like I said, when you put everything on a track, this is where, like, for me, because to be able to present this to you guys, I have to put it in a chronological order, and so when you actually put everything together, because it's kind of like a track, where you have different people moving at a certain, between a certain time frame. And when you put them all together, according to everything with the PCA and everything, and then when you add in Richard Allen's, original statement to Dan Dillon with the 1:30 to 3:30, it lines up perfectly, because there's been so many people that have walked the trail that have done the time, like how long it would take to walk from the Freedom Bridge to the Mona Bridge. It's usually somewhere around like 20 minutes, give or take. Maybe, it just kind of depends on, your physical shape and how fast you're going. But it seems like it's about a 20-minute walk, 25-minute walk. And so if you put, the killer on the track or Richard Allen in his time frame, everything lines up. He would run into those 4 witnesses just before the Freedom Bridge. And then, you'd have Betsy Blair, who's going to be coming just shortly later. And then as the killer goes to the bridge, she would start heading to the bridge. Fast forward this here. All right. Here. Again, I'm just going to show just a little bit of the timeline. I'm not going to go too far. But again, it just, like I said, you put it on the track. It just, everything lines up. Everything goes in order. So, hey, Joy, good to see you. Oh, no. Oh, I'm so sorry, Joy. Believe me, I know. I lost my mother. She was my rock, because my father wasn't really there that much, so my mother was everything, and yeah, I lost her. I am so sorry. Prayers for you and your family, and I hope things get better. That is so tough. Eric, can it be possible someone else is in on it, blackmailing RA to say he did it and confess? I would think if that was the case, remember, Richard Allen, the second he went into solitary confinement at Westville, they have cameras. And I'm sure that the defense went through those. And we know that the prosecution did as well because, obviously that's when he did a lot of his confessing. And even Allen apparently said that the issue he had, it wasn't with the guards, it was with the conditions of the actual prison where the lights were on, and then he said the prisoners were loud, but he never said it was any kind of physical abuse. So, I mean, it kind of throws out some of that stuff that the defense said that, he's forced to confess when there's no guards, assaulting him. So again, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more, obviously we don't we don't know what the prosecution has. Obviously, they've been super tight-lipped, and so I think it's gonna be pretty shocking when opening statements come out. I think we're gonna hear so much more. So let's recap. For those that came in a little bit late, again, that's just a little bit of the timeline, but I obviously today the big thing was the hair. Obviously, they talked about the motive, which is here.
And that then the bridge guy used the gun to force the girls to cross Deer Creek, and remove their clothes. And then abruptly he said, quote, and then he cut their throats, end quote.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what how the confessions go, because if it's, remember, they say 60 or 61 of them, all of those confessions have actual substance to them. And if he says something that only the killer would know, I mean, even if he was coerced, if he says something that, he's not supposed to know unless he's the killer, how else can you explain that? So, and there's 61 of these, and then there's more, which I think is the ones where, is it going to be where there's going to be a time frame from a certain month to, like 4 months, 6 months, whatever, where he's confessing, and all of these are legit confessions that have substance to them, and then at some point, the defense, as attorneys come and maybe they, whatever. And then all of a sudden these confessions now turn into confessions that are not legit. Obviously we'll see what happens, but I don't think that'll look very good if there's, it's all legit and then it turns into, these false ones. Seventy says he said he shot them to an inmate. Yeah, was it a phone game where the inmate? Yeah, and what counts as he told his mother. Yeah, and then the other interesting thing that I mentioned earlier is that apparently he was interrupted at 3:30, and apparently I believe this is Brad Weber, which is they have a private drive that goes under the bridge, and I'm assuming he came home at 3:30. And this area here, as we're going to see here, is really close to the crime scene. And that's interesting. I don't think we've ever heard that, he was interrupted. And I just find it interesting that it's at 3:30, and then Alan says originally 1:30 to 3:30. So I find that kind of fascinating. Could just be a coincidence, but here is just a look at the crime scene of what it would look like at that time. I don't know. I would, if I was on the jury, I would definitely would like to see the crime scene if I was part of the jury of something like this. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because right now it wouldn't look like this, I think fall's just starting, so I don't know if even the leaves on the tree have even fallen. I don't know if anybody in Delphi could confirm that, but I'm sure it'd look much different than what it looked like now. But you could see this is kind of where the crime scene was, right here. And there's the Monon Bridge, and as we pan around, there's that private drive that kind of goes under the bridge. And this is, for one of the homeowners that live back there. And so you could see that the crime scene, which is somewhere about in here, and if you had the guy driving, obviously, you'd be able to hear that and see them. So about right there, and the car would just kind of continue on. So obviously I think that would definitely freak out the killer. Rainy days, good to see you. Oh, gosh, where'd your thing go? There it is. Member for 28 months, justice for Libby and Abby. I totally agree. I really, the family's been waiting for, what is it, 7, we're almost at 8 years. Well, a little over 7 years. They've been waiting for justice. Thank you so much, Rainey, for the continued support. Squeaky Wheel, good to see R.A. himself may have been clever enough to deliberately give bogus details. Yeah, and then remember he was allegedly starting at Cuckoo. Was that? And then remember we've heard allegedly from the inmates saying that, and the security guard saying that they felt like he was.
But he said bridge guy
acting.
Left behind a bullet, which was found between the bodies. He talked about how you will hear Richard Allen place himself.
So there was a rumor. Apparently, I think this may have been in the July hearing, or if there was I can't remember all the hearings. I know that the July one was the big one. Allegedly, what happened is Richard Allen's wife, allegedly, obviously she supports him. She shows up for all the hearings. Allegedly, there was another person, and they parked next to each other, and I guess they had a short conversation, and apparently, allegedly, rumor has it that she had told, Kathy had told this person that she didn't believe because I think this was when they were talking about the confessions, and anyway, the story goes that Kathy took off her ring and said that she was done. I'm not sure what exactly she said. Again, this is all rumor. But maybe it's partly true, and maybe she was just frustrated that day and had to vent to somebody. And then she actually did come out with the statement, I think through her attorney, saying that she fully supports Richard Allen along with her mother. So yeah, they are there supporting
the
him.
Scene, and you will see that Richard Allen is bridge guy. He says you will see Richard Allen himself, in his own words, say that he did it. And how and why?
It's a good question, Pam Jam.
He talks about there's going to be evidence and video, and they're going to show that Richard Allen is bridge guy, and that they're going to talk about all these confessions. He lists the ones to his wife, his mother, correctional officers, his therapist, and quote anybody else that would listen, end quote.
And he concluded by saying Richard Allen is bridge guy, and it was Richard Allen who left the bullet, which is traced to one of Richard Allen's guns.
So I was looking at the bullet stuff. Obviously, I think the bullet, especially because it's not, it's not a bullet that was fired through the gun. It was only ejected. And so I was looking up old videos of them experts kind of talking about it. And of course, the defense is going to say it's junk science. And I've seen some experts say that, yeah, sometimes it could be useful, but other times it's kind of I don't know if 50-50 is the right word, but it's kind of one of those things that I guess it depends situation to situation on whether the extractor actually leaves a mark and a groove, and are you able to recreate that? So it'll be interesting. I'm sure that bullet, but I think the confessions, out of everything, that's going to probably be the most damning thing is the confessions, because if Richard Allen starts saying something that no one could know except for the killer, I mean, that's I think to me that it's over.
In him,
the conditions Richard Allen was in when he
falling out because they make you proud.
Happening now. It's day 2.
So yeah, just one last time, and then of course the hair, which they used the word clutched in her hand. So again, we were kind of discussing could it be animal hair, but they said it didn't match Richard Allen. So I'm assuming it's got to be human hair, but it's possible. It'd be smart if a killer brought some kind of random hair from a neighbor or somebody that doesn't have any kind of. Or I don't know what to think, but it's certainly possible that this killer was clearly kind of thinking ahead, and yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what that hair is all about. Isabel, wouldn't there be some DNA on those branches, perhaps? Hi, Chris, and all. Looking smart, Chris. Thank you so much. On the branches, if they had, I don't know, because if you touch a branch, I don't know if you're the oils on your, I think that'd be really hard for them to find. But if you're familiar with the case, obviously one of the victims sadly had their neck cut and they were bleeding so bad that they were covering their throat, and then sadly made a mark on the tree. So they got DNA from that, but that was just from the victim themselves. Yeah, the hair. It'll be interesting to find out. It'll be interesting to hear what the prosecution says, because obviously there are two sides to every story, and then, the real thing in the middle. So, because could the killer have been wearing a wig? What I think, this is just my theory on what the killer was wearing, and this kind of hit me when I was looking at. So for those that don't know, there was also 2 other sketches that weren't released. This is one of them. This one, please correct me. I know there's some people in the chat probably know this case better than I do. I believe this one came from one of the juvenile witnesses. So I think this kind of gives you an idea of what he was, when he was passing them. This is kind of what he was wearing. So obviously he had a hood. And I think, because when you see the original poster, not this one, but the other one, where it looks like he's kind of got an ivy cap, driver cap, golf cap. There's so many names for it, just the one that's got the short bill on it. I really think what it was is he actually had a beanie on. And they did take a lot of beanies. So yeah, there's the one where he's got the what looks like a driver's cap on. Sorry, did I back this up too much? So what I think he has is, I think he actually has a brown hoodie on. Or a brown hoodie. I'm sorry, a brown beanie. I don't know why I keep wanting to say hoodie. So here's the other 2 photos that are allegedly drawn. And notice there's one thing that they both have in common. They both have a beanie. This one looks more like a stocking cap. But either way, beanie, stocking cap. And if you think about it, remember the young guy sketch came out. That really threw everybody for a loop. I think it's because Richard Allen was actually wearing a brown beanie. And she saw him from 50 feet away, and that brown beanie looked like brown curly hair. That's just my theory on it. But yeah. We still got over 600 people in here. If you can, please hit that like button. So the plan is, and for mods too, and I'll send some emails, is we're going to go live starting on day 1 of the official trial. And I'm not going to go live the entire day. I'll probably start maybe like at noon. We'll have to kind of gauge how the first day goes and how the information's coming out. Maybe start maybe an hour earlier or 2 hours earlier than now. So about 4 p.m. Eastern time. So that way it's like 3/4 of the day through. And then we can kind of finish, go through what happened, obviously, in the morning. And then when we get caught up, then hopefully by the time the show ends, we can finish off whatever they were talking about at the end of day one. So here's the issue. I just want to show this. So, God, look how scary that bridge is, man. Oof, look at all the ties that are missing. So here's the issue. This is kind of more of what it would look like. I'm assuming the leaves would be probably changing colors. So again, I do believe that the jurors should see the crime scene, but I don't think they'll actually be able to go down to the crime scene. It is very dangerous. It's very steep. Whatever way you go, you're going to go down a very steep hill. I'm sure maybe there's a few areas that are a little less steep, but from what I understand, it's just kind of like a bowl. So I think it'd be great for them to at least see the bridge, because obviously they made it safe for the first 2 platforms so they could get an idea. Then they'd be able to look down because you can kind of see where the crime scene is. But other than that, look how different it is during the summertime. Like, it's a jungle. And so I don't think you would really get that same recreation of what it was like for the girls that day, because it would be just so much different. You wouldn't even be able to see the crime scene because everything's full. Whereas if this was fall, you would probably be able to see through the creek and maybe to the other side. That's the private drive right there. So I believe the defense has also filed another motion that they want, they're trying to get the jurors to go out there and see the crime scene. Again, I'm all for transparency and given everything that they need to, when it's all said and done, to come up with, the right verdict. Meep says, and he walked it like it was nothing. Yeah, I think that shows that this guy was a local. I mean, to be able to, because the infamous photo of Abby here, and he's nowhere to be seen. People thought they had seen somebody, but there's nobody there. And this is taken at, 2:07? Oh, no, 2:09. I have 2:09 there. And then 6 minutes later, something like that, but at 2:13, so not long after, this guy, usually I think it takes anywhere, it depends on, person to person, but they say it's about 4 to 5 minutes to cross from one side to the other at a steady pace, I believe. This guy hauled butt out of nowhere.
13 p.m. This was probably due to the fact this guy was approaching at fast pace.
The motive is, and I'm sure it's not going to be any surprise, but they say the motive, according to the prosecution, they say the motive is SA, sexually motive, and that he got interrupted. And I think this is one more theory, and then we'll go through chat for about 10 minutes and answer some questions. Sorry, I forget what I was going to say. I got to back it up real quick. One second here, guys. Oh, so I think, sadly, whatever happened, these girls Libby, of course, had her phone. She started recording at 2:13. 2:32, her phone stops moving. So that's 19 minutes. So that means that whatever happened, it happened pretty quickly. And I think, of course, Libby, even though she's a bigger girl, she was very athletic. She played baseball. She was on the swim team. I think, in my personal opinion, I think she tried to put up a fight, and that pissed off the killer. And, we heard that Richard Allen, when in the hearing during the July hearing, that he would look back at Libby's family and give them dirty looks. And that apparently in one of his confessions, he said that he felt terrible for Abby but never mentioned Libby's name. That's apparently in one of the confessions. So my theory is I think Libby did something and that stalled whatever, because obviously we know she was naked, so something was going to go down, and I think she wasn't going to stand for it. And I think she got attacked first, and just terrible tragedy. Terrible. Linda says, in my opinion, this is sketchy with RA. Could there be more than one killer? You never know. A lot of people felt like there was definitely some kind of other entity involved in this. Like somebody lured them there. Yeah, he cocked his gun when he was on the bridge. So when he cocked his gun when it was on the bridge, he had a live round ready. And then obviously that was to intimidate him. And that's captured in the 43-second video when they're walking. And then I think when he went across the bridge, maybe he did it again to intimidate him and didn't realize it. And then, of course, since once you have a live round in and you go to cock it again, of course, it'll eject the live round out because there's one in there, so it can replace it. So, or there was a fight and it got accidentally ejected again. It could be so many scenarios where the live round's in there and somehow the gun got cocked where it ejected out. So, Badass American, did he tell his wife, Kathy, he was going to the trails that day? Or did he talk to her or tell her he talked to the conservation officer? Yeah, obviously we don't know. Maybe we'll learn some of that. But, yeah. It's a good question. Does anybody have any thoughts on it being premeditated or spontaneous? I think if you're bringing a gun to a trail, unless that's something like he just, because he did have a permit. But then if he had knives on him as well, I think that leans more towards premeditated. Yeah, I believe it's 43 seconds. Rebecca says maybe the younger guy went there to meet the girls, couldn't find him, hence the two different sketches. It's possible. I don't think so, but I know that was definitely a theory back in the day. Yeah. Get to a few more questions here. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Thank you to all those that donated. And Peyton, thank you so much for the PayPal. It does help. I always like to have visuals for everybody that can understand timelines and so yeah, I'd spend many hours putting these things together for you guys. So it does help for the support. Just gonna see if there was anything else. I'm just gonna leave that here so I answer a couple more questions, and then so tomorrow they're gonna be off. I know I just mentioned this. For anybody that missed it, they're gonna be off tomorrow. They're gonna come back Thursday, and Friday is opening statements. Let's just see if there's anything that maybe we missed here. Okay, a new filing. Let's see what we got. Let's save this here. Let's see what this one has to say. Okay, let's look at what the prosecution filed real quick here. Okay, state's response. Now comes state of Indiana prosecutor Nicholas Cleveland. Defendant's motion to compel deponents to answer questions, and in support of said motion would state the following. The state believes the information the defense is asking the court to compel is privileged information as it's a work product or pertains communication between the state and one of their witnesses, not relevant to the guilt or innocence of Richard Allen. That as of August 10th, 2023, a deposition of Jerry Holman, substance of conversations had between Sheriff Tony Liggett and Holman, while the prosecutor is present to discuss trial strategy, is work product and therefore confidential. Yeah, I mean, that sounds right. That is May 3rd, 2024. Deposition of Jerry Holman and the decision when to hire a blood spatter expert for the trial is at the discretion of the prosecutor, and not only is Jerry Holman not in the position to answer that, but the state's strategy as to when to hire a blood spatter expert is work product and confidential. That is March 22nd. Deposition of John G., which is the guy for, isn't John, I'm going to butcher his last name. Isn't he the warden, I believe? Yeah, and it even says Department of Corrections are confidential. April 18th, deposition of Joshua Robertson. Conversations between Robertson and his attorney are confidential. Okay. Same thing, May 3rd, Tony Liggett, the purpose. So it seems like the defense wants these interviews or whatever was going on between all these guys here. Yeah, so they wanted the communications between all of these different scenarios that took place during throughout last year, this year, between the obviously the lieutenant, Tony Liggett. So, I mean, that makes sense. That's nothing big. I think the one with the sketches, obviously that would be huge for the defense if they kept that in, because obviously the sketches don't look really anything like Richard Allen, but the prosecution wants them out. So it'll be interesting to see what Judge Skull allows or denies Thursday. Jennifer says he may have been looking for victims for a long time before that day. Yeah, maybe he did go to the bridge prior to that. Maybe multiple times. Weren't there 3 teenagers on the path? There was 4. One of them, there was 2 sisters. Now, they only mentioned 3 in the PC affidavit, but there was actually 4 there. But what's interesting is the one that they left out, the youngest one, she's the one that said, I think the guy that I saw was Jimmy Duvall. Right. Oh, there he is. That guy right there. So, who looks eerily similar to Richard Allen. So, it'll be interesting to see what she says. But yeah, that's Jimmy Duvall. And yeah, he's got the short hair. He's got the mustache. And that allegedly comes from the younger sister. So, again, it'll be interesting what happens. I'm sure fireworks are going to go off Friday for sure. Yeah, he said 3. But it's possible that, maybe one of them was kind of off. Keep in mind, if you're the killer, right, you would likely have your head down because you don't want to be seen, even if you did have your face covered somehow. So I'm assuming he wasn't really, scanning and trying to have conversations. Obviously, he says himself he didn't talk to the girls, and likewise with the victims. They said, or the witnesses. They both corroborate each other's statement. They were, at that time, they were teenagers. So obviously they were in high school, middle school. So yeah. I just want to thank you, say a special thanks to my wonderful mods. Obviously, we're going to be going live a lot. Mods, I'll email you on kind of the plan because it's going to be a Monday through Saturday thing. Starting, obviously, we'll do Friday, Saturday, and then next week it's Monday through Saturday. And so I plan to go live each day. Probably not more. We'll try to aim for like 2 hours, but I'm going to try to aim for like when the when it's almost over for that day, so I can just get all the notes that have been coming out in the morning and then put that together. And then as we go through that, then by the time that's done, that day will be over. And then I'm sure there'll be more news that we'll cover. So, all right, guys, I think I'm going to head out. Again, thank you guys so much for the support. Again, if you want full coverage on this, we're going to be going live each day. I'll even probably do some short videos if there's something like huge. And then I do have a Patreon. That's another way to support the channel. And I'm going to be working on that as soon as I get off this live show. So, just looking at chat. All right, guys. We will. I think I might actually do a members live tomorrow. I'll let the mods know because I didn't get to do it Sunday, and then we may go live Thursday because I'm sure there'll be some interesting stuff that goes on in the courtroom. So yeah, that should be the plan. All right, guys. I'm gonna head out. Much love to you guys. Have a great week, and we will be back likely tomorrow for the members, and then Friday is the big day. All right, guys, I'm going to play the outro. We'll see you guys soon. Much love. Thank you guys so much for the support.